is a wonderful history of trains in the movies, and it goes way, way back to that long ago, 1896, when the Lumiere brothers shot just an actuality shot of a train coming into a French railway station. People who were watching it in a cinema had never seen anything like this, and they were terrified. They started screaming. Then in 1903 came this iconic 12-minute silent film that the Edison brothers produced, and it is remarkable. It changed the course of film history. It's a really interesting movie, which you can see on Google, actually. It shows this daring attack of the robbers, where they force the engineer to split the locomotive from the passenger cars because they're going to rob the passengers, and they do. And they escape with the loot. They are caught. Yes, and there's a little comic edge just before they are. But one of the things that was unusual about this film was that it ended up with a still shot of one of the robbers lifting his gun. He aims it directly at camera and shoots it. Next is a very different film, which I adore, called Brief Encounter. And you'll remember the lovers meet in a train station, and they have this terribly difficult goodbye there. And that's 1945. Then Hitchcock comes along, 1979, with The Lady Vanishes. I hope you've seen these. And then there was the first Murder on the Orient Express with the famous Albert Finney playing Hercule Poirot with that big mustache. And then the remake of it, which Kenneth Branagh did in 2017. He even enlarged the mustache. Do you remember this? It is a very interesting film of Hitchcock's, 1951 now, where these two absolutely different guys meet on a train and plot the too perfect crime. And it is too perfect because it doesn't work as they hoped. Now, all of those were movies that about what? Were they a whodunit, a romance, a thriller? And they all took place on trains. But I produced, along with many partners, a groundbreaking Canadian movie, which was about the creation of the railroad. And I'm here to talk to you about the details of that film tonight.
How do you think you can cross that in a year?
I will drive a railroad through there if it kills me and every last man under me. Straighten yourself up. I need a man to go to China to bring back those 2,000 damn Chinamen before Chinese New Year.
What do I know about China? Nothing.
Then learn something.
Luck can change in two directions. Do you want to end up like your father?
I will work for you, Mr. James. My name is Little Tiger.
Oh, we need men, not boys.
Find a safe bed, Little Tiger.
About you all the time.
Whoa.
I'm a girl.
You can't stay here.
Mr. James.
You leave now!
You think we can change the world? I think the more likely the world changes us.
I want to be with you.
You don't even know who I really am.
It is a what if love story about two very different people. This street urchin who disguises herself as a guy in order to make a living when her mother dies and her father has left. She works at a fireworks factory, and these are the firecrackers that surround her. And she learns how to set explosives in there, which will come in very handy later. She sells her own fireworks in the market, but in her heart, she longs to go to Gold Mountain because she has had letters from her father that then mysteriously stopped, but she believes her father might be alive somewhere in Canada. When gold was found in the Fraser Canyon in 1857, the word spread back to China, and thousands of people came to Canada from Toishan in southern China. And then later, when Little Tiger actually is able to get hired on the railroad, it is still called Gold Mountain in British Columbia. She sails across on a long sea voyage, and when she comes through Victoria, she has an awful greeting. They're racist white people. They're greeting them coming down the gangplank saying, go back to where you belong. They were so afraid that these Chinese workers were taking jobs from the white Irish workers. But she and her friend Wang Ma persevere. They go to the railway camp. They, although they're scared, they pitch in and they get moving in their jobs. And her job at first is as a tea boy, because they took the tea to the workers on the track or on the cliff. They didn't give them breaks long enough for them to go back to their own tents. There's a mysterious bookman who actually puts her on the explosives crew because he finds out that she has that skill, but she doesn't know whether to trust him. But one she does trust is James. And you saw in the trailer how she revealed herself as a girl. And he realized that this kid that he likes so much, the boy, was a woman that he actually loved. But it was a taboo romance, certainly in those days, virtually impossible. But he does love her. And here is, you ask, how did I come across this? Me, a white woman in Toronto, how did I come across this story? Well, I love opera. And I went to this little workshop of opera produced by the Tapestry Company. I remember coming home from that workshop haunted by an image, and I'm going to show it to you. That's what it was. This girl disguised as a guy setting explosives on the sheer mountain cliff. I said to myself, that's a movie. And that was how they blasted through what were called the impassable Rockies. So I hired Barry Pearson to do the writing and the story. And Barry was from Saskatchewan, and he remembered in his childhood, in the middle of the night, how that mournful sound of the train whistle haunted him. And he based the character, actually, some of the qualities of the character of Little Tiger, on his own mother and her great strength and determination. The other writer was Raymond Story, a very prolific screenwriter and producer of many, many television series that you will have seen. And his son, Wilfred, is actually a train enthusiast who volunteers with the Toronto Railway Museum. What a wonderful coincidence. My producing partner in BC was Raymond Massey, and he proves to you that producers don't just sit behind the desk dealing with big dollars. There he is, actually striking the spikes into the new railroad sequence with that difficult hammer. He was telling me yesterday that he was very scared because it was hard to manipulate, but he did everything very, very well. And that sequence of the spikes being hammered in is right in our opening credits. The executive producer was Arnie Zapersky, who was originally from BC. And when he was in film school, his master's thesis was about the building of the railroad. So when I found that out, I welcomed him in. There he is with his family in the forests of BC with our film crew. That's me on the track beside Barry, and coaching our star, Sun Lee. I'll tell you much more about her later. She's a remarkable, remarkable woman and actress. This is our production designer, and I especially want you to know about Linda because of what she did in relation to the trains. Now, here is the 1880s locomotive recreation that formed so much of our story. But how were we to get it? There isn't an operating locomotive from the 1880s. What were we to do? Well, we knew that there were pictures of this first train through the tunnels of the Rocky Mountains. Can you see here? I want you to see this first train and its funnel stack, the huge steam coming out, and the fact that this was what first guided Linda, plus this picture of the 440 with its funnel stack, its steam domes. You can see the two of them, you know, the pressure relief valve and the one for the sand, and the bell, which works in addition to the whistle. She researched all of this, and also Andrew Onderdonk's own train. He is the character who was given the contract to build that most dangerous part of the railroad through the what they call the impassable Rockies. That was his train. And this is the CPR train just before the first transcontinental train arrived. There's a newspaper shot of it in June 1886, having come from Montreal right through to Port Moody, which, as you know, is very close to Vancouver. That's the actual locomotive that one of your board members, Russ Milland, shot at the Drake Roundhouse in Vancouver. And here's what we did. We found this wonderful 2141 engine that the Kamloops Heritage Railroad treasures. It was from, let me get it straight, 1912, and they resurrected it. They made it operational, and we then adapted it to look like those 1880 locomotives. I'll show you what we did. We added a funnel stack. We added a much bigger cow catcher. We covered the serial number, the 2141, with this decorative casing. And we added the flag. You'll see it, how we adapted it in the film. Here are some pictures. There's our wonderful director, David Wu, on the far left, explaining to the director of photography how he wants to shoot this locomotive. And there it is. It gives you a good picture of what we did to create it. This is what we got. Our money shot, which we also had enlarged with the full steam from that locomotive, and we used it as our poster shot. And there's little Tiger running in front of course, this is a promo shot. She didn't actually run in front of that railroad in the story. And here are two of our cameras, one stationary, one mobile. You'll see there's a female camera person, and you can see the details of the changes we made to the locomotive. I'll let you take a look at that. You know why the funnel stack was invented, because when they first created the steam from wood fire, there were great embers in the much smaller stack. The wood still on fire was going out on the edges of the crack, and it was of the track, and it was very, very dangerous. So they had to create this funnel shape to prevent that. And then, of course, later there was coal used to create the steam. Here's, oh, I must tell you, when I was on set, I went into the cab of this train, and I actually pulled the cord to create that mournful train whistle, and I shoveled some coal into the firebox, believe it or not. There is the locomotive behind Little Tiger and Wang Ma. Again, you can see more detail of it here. And there she is with her explosives in a promo shot. And when love blooms, it's in front of that locomotive. And next, Linda had to create an authentic rail car. Now, of course, these rail cars were not actually being used for passengers at the time, because the railroad hadn't been built, but they were used for offices and to transport a few people from what was called Granville, but later renamed Vancouver. And so Linda studied all the actual pictures, and she then used it on our set, the rail car that she recreated, so that the debutante from Vancouver could come visit, and that the workers could rile against the corrupt engineer. And she created this office rail car. And I know that some train aficionados have told me that it was a very good recreation. And besides that, the boss, Nickel himself, the big boss, based on Andrew Onderdonk, is in his private rail car talking to his son, James. Of course, that's where he slept. And where did the workers sleep? They slept, lived in tents by the track. Very different. I want to talk to you about our cast. We had a wonderful setting, all these recreations of the train, the cars, but you know, what makes a movie are the actors and the story. So here's a list of the international cast and where they're from. I'm going to tell you about them individually now. Sun Li, who's a very famous actress in China, her English, she hardly had any English when we cast her in this. I watched 2 auditions by her, and it was very tricky because she had difficulty with the actual script lines, but I saw the emotion in her and believed in her, and she absolutely followed through and learned every single line by heart. And backing her were these male stars: Luke, who plays James; Sam Neill from New Zealand, he came, and he adored being in China; and Peter O'Toole, you will know, from England, no longer with us. Sadly, this was his final film. And Tony Leung, who is originally from Hong Kong, but his 2 daughters had gone to school in Victoria. So he was delighted to come here. Here's the details of this cast. Sam, you would know from Jurassic Park. And then the upcoming Jurassic World 3 is going to be in cinemas in June of this year. And he plays a railroad tycoon who has a very strained relationship with his son. You'll wonder how I was able to get to him. Well, he had just shot a film directed by David Wu, and he respected David's talent so much that, and I knew Sam's agent. So when I broached her, she said, oh yes, he would like to work with David Wu again. Peter O'Toole came from England. And how did I get to him? Because I had cast 2 of his stage plays here in Toronto, and I drove him around. You know how tall and skinny he was. And I drove him around in a Volkswagen Beetle with his knees right up to his chin. And we became good friends, and I knew his agent also. And as you see, his wonderful credits and his honorary Oscar. But he died soon after shooting Iron Road. I remember he said to me, Anne, I love this character and I love playing him. And you can see that in his delight with Sun Li, and he lifting his hat in our opening day celebration, and how wonderful he was in the film itself. Luke is such a talent from London, Ontario. He did an audition in which he suddenly brought out his Algonquin canoe paddle. So he endeared himself to us by his love of the outdoors in Canada. And there he is in a crucial scene with Sun Li. Where did we shoot? In an amazing place that calls itself the world's largest film studio, 5 hours out of Shanghai. And it actually is the world's largest film studio. What we really valued first was the recreation of the Hong Kong streets in 1880, which is where our film starts. And you see Peter there on the street. Good. Hungdian is an amazing place. And here I'll show you. Here's James, little tiger, our chief camera, Richard Wilson, on a track so that he can go up and down the streets of Hong Kong in the Lunar New Year celebration with these drummers. And there is David Wu showing to the first assistant director, who was a woman from Hong Kong, and to Attila Zale, the director of photography, exactly what kind of framing he wants on the shot. More for you to take in the same thing. You know that a DOP, or director of photography, Attila, he's from Hungary originally. He came over with his parents and he gave up a huge job in which would have paid him far more money, really, to do this film, because he said, I cried when I read the script. It reminds him of my parents coming to Canada with $50 in their pocket. That story of Little Tiger touched his heart. Also, Hungdian has these canals where Little Tiger and James go upriver to recruit workers from the remote villages. So we were able to film these quite beautiful scenes right in Hungdian. Now we go to Canada, very different. As Little Tiger arrives, she comes to this railway camp in a remote part of the mountains of BC. Here you'll see the rail car on that old track. And now I'll show you it overhead, that steam engine working so well with the actors and camera all around it. And if you want, in the Q&A, I'll tell you how we got it from the Kamloops Heritage Railway. Here you see it from overhead, the detail of the funnel stack, the steam domes, the boiler, and the cow catcher. We also had horse-drawn wagons on set, and over here are the fresh ties, the raw wood that were used when we recreated the building of the track. Keep that in mind as we go to this. There they are, and it reminds me of that old Depression song. Do you know it? Once I Built a Railroad. We did build this railroad with all our movie extras. It was done, and this marvelous photo takes me back to that thrilling moment when they put in the last bit of track. And then, once it was done, it was really done. We got rid of it, as you have to do on a movie set in the mountains of BC. Now, besides all that recreation of the 1880s engine, we knew that the trestle bridges, which were so necessary for going through the mountains, were made of wood. And the ones that we had operational were actually metal. And here's what we did. We took bark from the trees and put them along the metal of the trestle bridges so they would be close. They're not exact, but they're close to the 1880s trestle bridge. There I am at a tunnel mouth. Now, the tunnels, of course, were crucial. And you can see the newly laid track there that I was referring to. Tunnel creation, exploding and getting through a tunnel was a crucial part of making it possible for the trains to go through the Rockies. And you will remember in our story how Little Tiger, with her skill, actually clears a blocked tunnel. And the moment when we see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, she impresses even the bookman and the engineers with her skill. But the fact is that a lot of tunnels actually fell in on themselves. And that's what happens at a crucial point in the movie, you'll remember. And when the roof of the tunnel collapses, oh, here's how we created that. You can't take a film crew into a tunnel. You can't get the lights and everything required. So in that town of Hungyan, in the high school auditorium, we created the inside of our own tunnel with the camera there. And in order to duplicate the roof falling in, we brought an IV, intravenous package with sand in it. And when the tunnel started to collapse, we cued the sand to fall in, which indicated that the workers were in terrible danger. And they certainly were. The tunnel collapses and those dead workers are pulled out from the tunnel and laid out on the tracks. And this is what happened, so many of them. 3 of them died for every mile of track that they laid. And the white workers had doctors of their own in the camp. The Chinese did not have any doctors or medical help, and only the bookman was left to try to save a few of them. It's a very dark mark on the history of our country. The big final question was, how do you create the cliff on which so many of the important scenes of the movie happen, and you pull the audience in to feel that they are right up there on the cliff? But obviously you can't put a camera crew on the cliff. And I'm really going to leave you to ponder that now with what we'll call a cliffhanger. Here we are on the cliff. And of course, we movie producers spend millions trying to create illusions that draw you into the story. And here I am tonight, going to pull back the curtain on all that movie magic and show you what we actually did to create this cliff. We had to give the illusion that it was way up above a roiling river, a terrifying place where if you fell off, of course you would die. It was a famous scene where Wang Ma talks about how despairing he is, and he actually wants to slide off his swing chair and be like a hawk and leave. And little Tiger says, "Don't you ever talk that way." So that was one of my favorite scenes in the film, which Raymond wrote. And here is what we did. Now I know this is a fuzzy picture, but this, I haven't told you that in Hungyan, they have recreated the famous historical buildings of China, which are up in the north, most around Beijing. But this is a replica of the Forbidden City. You can see the famous roofs. It was actually constructed in the 1400s, the original. Linda del Rosario created this cliff. Can you see it there? Hung it on the wall of this Forbidden City, and all our camera crew came in. There's a boom mic here. I think you can just see it. And these cranes take the cameras up. What she told me today actually was how they had a metal frame, the welders shaped pieces of plastic by just holding it in front of their faces with one hand while they sparked away with the welding torch to create the basic shape of the rocks. The metal mesh was added, and then a cement slurry was troweled onto it. And when that became thick enough and hardened, the scenic painters came in and they did their magic to match as closely as they could the color and texture of the mountains of British Columbia. That's the actual thing I'm talking about. The mesh, the metal mesh covered with the cement. And of course, then we had a green screen at the back, and in post-production, we added the sky and the mountains be way behind. Now, forgive me, but I am going to destroy all that by showing you what we actually did. Here is the little tiger on her swing chair. This is the replica of the cliff. These are, there's the camera, the boom mic, and there is what was actually behind her. Our efforts paid off. We got a lot of international awards, which were so satisfying. The first one was in Rome, where our film opened the festival, and I was amazed. They voted Sun Li Best Actress. Now, I'll show you later how she was given that award. I received it in Rome, and you know, they have their opening night part. Well, I told you that Iron Road opened, and then they had this opening night party up on the Castel Sant'Angelo. Those of you who know Rome will know that iconic prison come castle, which is actually the third act of Tosca, if you remember. And that's where I met Helen Mirren, who was an honored guest at the festival, and she loved Iron Road. Next, in the Dominican Republic in Central America, I was amazed. They had a huge Chinese population in Santo Domingo, their capital city, and we opened in their beautiful National Theater, and then we were voted Best Fiction Film. The president of the Dominican Republic was there and greeted me, and I thought their own picture would win, but no, Iron Road was voted best. And from Central America, right home to Ontario at the Brantford Festival, we were lucky to be Best of Fest and People's Choice. And then the Canadian Gemini Award, which is now called the Canadian Screen Award, was given remotely to Sun Li. I'll show you a picture in a moment. And then we won a lot of Canadian Leos. These are the British Columbia awards for best cinematography, best design, best costumes. And as I told you, what we had, the consulate in Rome flew the award from their festival over to Shanghai, where Sun Li received it from David Wu, our director. And in Toronto, I accepted the Gemini Award for Sun Li that was held on Yonge Street in the Elgin Theatre. It was so thrilling. It truly was. And here's our press. You can't ask for better press. You know John Doyle, the critic at the Globe and Mail, not easily impressed, but I loved his two adjectives there, massive and magnificent. The guy from the Toronto Star who compared the human tragedies in our film with The Pianist impressed me very much. The guy from the Georgia Strait came to our film set. I toured him around in BC, and he talked about humanity's tenacity and innovation. And then we're thrilled to get a big film coverage, photo coverage, I should say, from the Globe and Mail. The Toronto Star, that's a great headline. The Saskatchewan paper, where Barry was from, praised it very highly. Iron Road, I think many of you will have already seen it, but it is streaming on CBC Gem. But if you're not in Canada, you can buy the DVD on Amazon. It's a strange poster that Amazon created with Sam Neill there holding a gun. And there is Luke McFarlane and the famous locomotive behind it. So it's easy to buy there, the DVD. And the novel that I wrote afterwards, based on the movie, along with Paulette Bourgeois, had got a wonderful raves, really. And you can buy it. It's not expensive, and it has 30 color shots from the movie